So welcome everyone, welcome to the April edition of SQL Presents. I'm delighted to welcome you all today, and also our special guest, Anna Lane, who is the Group Communications Manager at PZ Cussons. Anna and I are going to be talking about authentic leadership in a minute, but just to put things into context, I'm just going to play you a short film first before we get into our chat.
Hello, today I'm talking to Sarah Pollard, Chief Financial Officer. Hi Sarah, how are you?
Good, you right?
You've had an amazing career working for some really impressive companies. Did you know early on in your career what you wanted to do?
Not at the very start. So I was a biochemist actually at university. 50% I think of biochemists become accountants. So having then embarked on a finance career, I got quite hooked. So I enjoy the intellectual rigour, the breadth of the role, and done in good businesses, you're very definitely at the heart of the business, which I enjoy. And I think I've always had two things in mind. One is I did have quite a clear goal in terms of where I wanted to get. So as I've moved from one role to another, I've always given each of them 150%. So that's always very important to me to do every job well. But I've also been thinking about where that next role might take me, you know, maybe 2 or 5 years down the track. So some semblance of a plan.
What qualities do you think makes a strong CFO?
So let's assume for the purpose of the question and the answer that I am one. A degree of reinvention. So in any given day, I might be meeting people on 5, 10 different topics, so real breadth. So playing a very different role as appropriate. And actually more broadly than that, I play a different role for different stakeholders, I think. So sometimes the cheerleader, sometimes the ambassador, sometimes the critical friend or the taskmaster. So being comfortable to be different versions of yourself. Sound judgment on certain topics, that's very important. And actually accountability, I think, because as a director on the board, as well as a member of the ELT, I feel I personally assume as much accountability as Jonathan might for the success of the business. So a real deep-rooted sense of responsibility and accountability.
As a senior female leader, do you have any perspectives to share?
I think first and foremost, honestly, I don't really give my gender a second thought. So I'm probably often the only woman in the room or one of a handful of women. I don't really notice, honestly, because I think you create your own shadow and your own conditions for success. So I tend not to think about it a huge amount. As any senior person in business, I'm juggling competing demands. So for me, what helps is having a real sense of my own purpose, which sounds maybe quite lofty. But actually, what I mean is I love my job. It gives me a real sense of pride and of pleasure. And that sustains me when things are tougher. And also, my husband and I are a team. And it just happens to be the job I play on that team is to be able to give my family some financial security. And that makes me very happy. But the thing I do for myself is to try and be easy on myself and realise I can't be all things to all people all of the time. So to let go of the perfectionism and let go of the guilt and have an occasional glass of wine as well.
So there's an authentic leader being interviewed by Anna, one of a series of interviews that Anna's done with the leadership team at PZ. Anna, welcome. Do you want to kick off by giving us a bit of background about yourself, your current role, and what you've been up to before?
Thanks, Nick, and hello everyone on the call. I've worked in comms for over 20 years, cut my teeth at Sky, working for Tony Ball then, and then moving on to James Murdoch, corporate comms at Warner Brothers. I've worked for the lottery. I've worked even for University of Brighton doing student comms and getting to know kind of trade union comms. So lots of different sectors. And now I'm Group Communications Manager at PZ Cussons, which started off as pure internal comms, but very quickly became corporate comms, website, annual report, investor relations, etc.
The whole remit.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about PZ Cussons, because I think we're probably familiar with a few of the brands, and some of the brands might surprise us. But give us an overview.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, probably like everyone working for different companies on the call. So PZ Cussons actually started out as two men who in the 1800s, it started out as a trading company. So going to Sierra Leone, West Africa, trading different goods, trying things out. Now we're a brand building business. So we have, priority markets, Australia, UK, Nigeria, Indonesia, and we sell everything from Carex, obviously critical during the pandemic. So sort of hygiene, baby and beauty categories, and beauty brands, everything from Saint-Tropez to Charles Worthington. So people often hear our company name and think, oh, don't you make that old imperial leather soap? That's just one of our brands that we're repositioning, but there's a whole portfolio.
Cool. And what are the main challenges facing PZ at the moment, briefly?
Gosh, briefly, like every business. I mean, obviously, supply chain, commodity costs, all of the stuff to do with the pandemic, and things like talent retention, acquisition. But also we are completely transforming our business. So we have a new CEO, well, newish, who joined in May 2020, completely new strategy, completely new leadership team. And we're just emerging from turnaround. So we're essentially changing everything all at once. Big marketing-led transformation.
Wow. So challenging times. And you mentioned you've got a new leadership team. I mean, they're pretty crucial, therefore, to the success of PZ going forward. And therefore, as a comms advisor, quite a lot to kind of work with them on.
Huge. I mean, I suppose I was lucky in that I was joining around the time that some of them were joining. So I was able to get in super early with them. And everybody kind of had this mode of change and transformation. So when I got in and lifted up the bonnet with comms and realised there weren't the things that I was hoping might be there, of course, then you can kind of get really involved with them in changing everything.
So how are you? I mean, we just saw one of the videos you shot there with Sarah. How are you working with them to kind of get the message across effectively? And how are you working to develop their own communication skills? I'm assuming that some of them are better than others.
Yeah, politely put. I was thinking about this call and everyone on it and people joining. You want tips, don't you? Whatever stage you are at your career. And I mean, reflecting on this, the theme for me overall with this job in particular, I've learned, is that building trust with them. Because obviously there were some that were staying from the previous CEO and some new people. And I used to think that when I joined a business, the first thing you've got to do is get your internal comms strategy. Within the first month, you've got to have this clear strategy. And I used to sort of produce this, and rather than building the relationships from the outset. And so with this job, especially, when they were joining, I contacted them straight away, and I wrote their biogs for the website and got their photographs done. So immediately it's kind of like helped me position myself in the business. And then obviously the same with the existing people. And worked with them to kind of launch them both as a team and individually in the business. And that was kind of critical, I guess. And then with the training, I could then sort of assess their comms skills politely by sort of helping them individually. And I realised that you can't just say to people, can you? You have to really sell this in. I need you as a team to be better at what you do, essentially, and also to work with me. So the way I pitched it, and obviously with your help, is everyone is having to update your comms skills in a hybrid comms world now. No leader is 100% perfect at this, and therefore, I worked with SQL, worked with you at SQL on bite-sized training, fitting in with their really, really busy diaries. So here's some training on, yes, we're going to do these formal pieces with you for film, but here's how you film yourself on your mobile phone to just give it a go with our support. Just giving them some UGC tips, working with them on language of leadership and rhetorical techniques and power of three and how to hold the room, but also how to hold a Zoom call. So feel free to judge me on the call as a result. And, also how to answer difficult questions for internal comms, because of course people think, oh, internal comms is easy, I can just show up, but actually by firing those difficult questions at them as if it was a global town hall, they suddenly realize, oh, hang on a minute, I need those sound bites. I need to be able to answer authentically, before I can go out and do external comms, frankly.
How do you think they found that kind of exercise, Anna? Because as you said, some of them might not have gone through it before. Were they taken aback by the directness of the approach, or were they warmly encouraging and kind of see the benefits? What do you think? Yeah,
it's a really good question, Nick, because as we all know, I had to warm them up for even the training. I suddenly realised no one wants to look foolish in front of their new colleagues, even in a trusted environment. So there was a lot of kind of individual messaging and reassurance. And some people, of course, react saying, oh, I don't need this. They push back on it, saying it's the fault of the outline of the training. And you're thinking that's just nerves, actually. So reassuring people individually that what they're walking into is not us about to embarrass them in front of their new colleagues, and kind of working with them on an ongoing basis. It's been interesting. It's really will people show their vulnerability or not? You're there to make sure that they're comfortable.
So moving on to authenticity as our subject for today, how important is it for you? Do you think is it for people to be authentic, to bring their true selves to work? I mean that covers a multitude of sins, but is it important that they're authentic?
Yes, obviously the answer is yes, but I actually think, I know I'm sounding a bit glib here, but you can't really hide someone's personality. Might make people chuckle on the call. Internal comms is a difficult job, isn't it? And a person is a person and they will be who they are. But as we've talked about often, Nick, it's important to be respected. They don't necessarily, you can't make sure someone's liked. But what you can do is give them, once you've got to know them, appropriate challenge and feedback about things that either serve them or don't serve them. And in order to do that, though, you as a comms person have got to be authentic and true to yourself and pick your battles. So clearly in the first few weeks of getting to know someone, I'm not going to wade in and tell them that they're coming across as, it's gradual kind of, have you thought about doing it like this? But certainly, if someone's trying to be someone they're not, and that includes, by the way, if someone's slightly more on the introverted side, it's not my job to make them pretend to be someone else. It's more to sort of let their qualities shine out, isn't it? And to be clear and concise.
And you're right. Everyone's got their own qualities, and that's what you need to get across. So it's not important therefore to be likable as such. It doesn't. It needs to be that they have a passion for the business and that people feel they're driving the business forward, rather than the fact that, oh, he's a good guy because he does whatever for charity. That's a byproduct almost. I
think it's, I suppose, for everyone now, it's a bit of both, isn't it? So you've got to be a purpose-driven leader, the purpose of your organisation, and also a focus and an awareness of your own self-development and vulnerability. I remember we've all worked for different leaders with different complexities, but one very head of an organisation said to me when I joined, I don't do internal comms, I don't do comms, I don't do video, I don't do this. thankfully for me, that person was leaving shortly afterwards, because you just can't do your job if somebody's going to say, I'm not going to engage with this. And it's the same with, learning, personal development. If somebody's not willing to in any way engage with the fact that they might need to work on some things, it's really, really hard for you. So I think they have to have a belief in what the organisation's trying to do and storytell and get that across, but also some willingness to apologise or show vulnerability. If they don't, and they are super alpha, it's another thing to work with, but usually at least those alpha people have the belief in the organisation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That passion's going to come across.
Yeah, and how's I mean, we saw your interview with Sarah there, and that was taken, I think, just when you got back from lockdown. How has the comms changed since lockdown? I mean, people have had to adapt. They've had to go on Zoom and online and been interviewed in different ways. How has that changed? Did you see the change? Because you joined about the same time, I think, as the pandemic started almost. So, how's that changed over the last couple of years for you?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think for all of us working in comms, it's often talked about, suddenly there was almost a personal feeling of, do I know what I'm talking about here? I've now got to suddenly adapt fully into this virtual world. So I had to learn on my feet rapidly, actually, about all of this, including, the dreaded, will I press, when I play the video on the Zoom call, will it have sound? All of this stuff that you're there to help them look good. And I think now what I'm grappling with is this hybrid, even things like hybrid town halls. It used to be fully present, then it was fully online. Now that person needs to be able to stand in a space and manage both, a bit like the lecturers have been doing in universities. So again, helping that person to feel comfortable and own the space, but also talk to the screen. That's something I'm grappling with at the moment, about how to kind of get that across well.
And Sarah came across very well in that clip that we showed at the start. Is it more difficult to do that on a video call than face-to-face? Or actually, do some leaders feel more comfortable that they're not being in the same room as people physically?
I think absolutely, isn't it? We all know that if a bit like now, you can put your feet on the ground in the chair and your hands on the desk. I mean, I was fully interviewed on Zoom. So certainly I was much more comfortable with that. So I think certainly, I mean, a couple of leaders I'm working with at the moment who are on the more introverted side, but super intelligent and clever, they have definitely preferred this format because they can have their notes around them, their comfy trousers on, whatever it is. They feel you can't see them shaking in the same way that they would if they were standing in a room.
If you were to see them shaking, would you not think that was more authentic experience than some polished PR chat from yourself?
Yeah, this is exactly what I was saying to somebody the other day. She was saying, when I walk in the room, they'll see the nerves. And I said, actually, people are not going to not respect that. You're there. It's about, I mean, I don't know, this is a by the by, but, I used to be a yoga teacher, more earlier in my career. And I think somebody said to me, you've got to own the room. Just if you just know that you deserve to be there. And apparently women especially, we often don't feel that we have the right to be standing up there. So whether it's on a Zoom call or in a room, know that you need to be there. If you're shaking, if your hands are shaking, hold on to something, have a way of standing, or even hold a pen. So just those little techniques that people can use to feel the fear, but do it anyway. And I just say to everyone, it's practice, isn't it? Even, our current CEO, I know he's a runner. He runs and he walks his dog and he talks it through what he's going to say. So even he who looks super, or our CFO who you just saw, they look super confident, they've practiced.
And is the fact that he's a runner and a walker well known to the organisation? And actually, is it important for people to know that what he does in his spare time? Is it important for people to have a look into execs' lives? I mean, I think it's an apocryphal tale, but someone mentioned to me about in the lockdown, a leader talking about how the sacrifices everyone had to make, and they'd had to give up their cleaner Does that make them more authentic, or does that make them, kind of unapproachable? It's a tricky one.
I know. Oh, we've all, haven't we? I mean, comms people on the call, we've all had those moments where someone says something and you've prepared this speech or this event, and then right at the end they say, I mean, I had someone who sort of said, well, I know that you're worried about whether you'll get a pay rise, but think of me, I've got 5 mortgages to pay. And you think, oh, or the Rishi Sunak putting the petrol in someone else's car recently. So, yeah, I think it depends on the leader, doesn't it, and their style. So we have a head in one of our overseas business units who's a super strong team player, and he's just done a big well-being thing with his team, and he's gone on the hikes, and they've kind of done it for charity, and they've all done. But that's because he is they're a culture. It's in Australia. It's lovely and sunny. They barbecue together. It's all of that. It's part of how he is all the time. So what I always say to people is, don't force it.
Right.
As you say, any guard against anything which looks like you're super wealthy or whatever, or you're filming yourself in your enormous house. Take care. Don't force it. But if it's something that it's the way that you work already with your team, or maybe it's a smaller team, then go for it.
Cool. How do you see the role of the leader as an authentic leader changing in the next few years, Anna? Because we've obviously gone through the last 2 years and it has changed. Will it settle down now? What will the future look like, do you think?
Yeah, I find this so interesting because all around us are examples of poor leadership as well, aren't there? And we won't name names, So, I mean, even things like the apprentice program, things that just seem so dated now about authentic leadership and where we're going. It's clear that, the leaders of now and in the future, there are big themes now, big global themes that you cannot hide from. Whether it's sustainability or just the need to empathy, the need to empathize with your people who are juggling such complex private lives. So I think, future leadership really is about being tuned in. It's more than ever, it's about audience, and the people that work for you are your key audience, frankly. So treating people with respect.
And you mentioned empathy there. You think that's a key kind of trait going forward, perhaps one that 30 years ago wasn't high on people's agenda, but will be in the future?
Yes, I think, I know, even if you're that super strong alpha, leading the organisation, you've got to have a team around you that are connecting in with people. We've all got stories of really, really difficult leaders shouting at people, acting a certain way in environments. You just can't do that anymore. And neither can you say that you don't do comms.
So do you think in the future leaders will be automatically trained to be better communicators, or have those skills towards a university? How do you see that shaping up? Because as you said at the start, not everyone likes communicating. Will they have to in the future?
They will. And I think I know what I'm always really envious of are people who maybe through their education have come through their education system where you've been debating and you've been doing this stuff. But even at university now, when I was at university, you didn't do group work and presentations, did you? It was all exams and coursework and written, etc. So I think the way I'm much more confident that the way that young people now are coming through whatever education they're having, and even their use of social media, they're just super savvy. So it's actually, I feel already, it's kind of my age group and beyond that are actually having to get with the program, frankly, and kind of treating these different generations now, making sure that we're super tuned in with what they need.
And I guess the older generation of leaders can learn from these young guys coming through, and actually kind of, rather than ignore them as, kind of young whippersnappers, actually say, I can learn from these guys. Actually, they're doing it a lot in a different way to me, but actually perhaps I should take some tips.
Yes, and I suppose, as we know, the top-down communication stuff where you hold all the answers at the top is gone. But equally, there is still, and I'm sure you'd agree, Nick, there are still some basics that no matter how much social media there is, that will still apply. Whether it's kind of like how you hold the attention of the room, human psychology, the need to focus on the audience and the message before you get carried away. they will still hold, because you've got to cut through the noise and be clear about what you're aiming to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. So to finish up, 3 top tips for internal comms pros who are trying to help leaders get the message across authentically. Give us 3 takeaways, Anna, for our audience today. Because that's what, as you said, people want tips and practical solutions.
Yeah, so I would say, power of 3. So as mentioned, build trust. So don't hide. Don't hide from the difficult leaders and the difficult staff. Lean in, get to know them, except you can't, pick your battles. And then I suppose in terms of the 3 techniques, it's that whole thing, isn't it, about know your audience, what do you need them to know and do before you get stuck into channels and whatever, because everyone forgets that at their peril, basically.
So is that groundwork then, getting to know them before you go into, you said, the strategy and the channels and, hey, look at me, we'll do a new intranet. It's like, and get the leader on it. It's actually get to know them as people and understand what drives them.
Exactly. And also you can't win it. You can't win it all. So don't die in a ditch if you suggest that something's got to be this short and somebody comes back with pages and pages. Just do what you can. That's what I've realized as a comms person. You can't win all the battles with leaders. So choose carefully. And then once you've built trust, you can then start to advise them that maybe something might be a better alternative.
Sure. And actually, it's a difficult question, actually, but how long would you say does it take to build trust? I'm assuming it's varies an individual, but is it weeks and months? It could be years. What's the process?
Yeah, I think I'm still reflecting on that, Nick, actually. What I have learned is that you can lose trust in 20 minutes, can't you? So no matter how much you've built, I always think never push that person into that room or on that call or something without thinking, if it was me, how would I want to be treated before I step onto that stage? I always think, look after that person before they have to go forth and do that thing. Because if you do that, you'll retain that trust. Don't. So my boss has a line like, no surprises. No surprises that you can influence anyway.
And not just about budget.
Exactly. Things will happen. There are certain things that happen. You think, oh no. But as long as you have, as much as possible, prepared that senior leader for what they're going to do, then it's up to them, isn't it? Exactly.
You can only advise, and you can lead a horse to water. There's a kind of saying there somewhere, which I'm getting mixed up. But Anna, thank you for your time this morning. Really appreciate that. Fascinating session as always. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you again very shortly. Thanks very much.
Thanks everyone.